Everyone, and welcome back to Finance Prep, Finance Made Easy. Today in this lecture, we are going to continue with chapter number 3. In last lecture, when we started this chapter, we had studied what exactly are different terms that are used in mutual funds. Like what is an AMC, what is a custodian, what is a sponsor, what are their eligibility criterias, etc. In this video, we are going to cover the second important part of the chapter where we see the organizational structure of an AMC, an asset management company. So when you talk about an asset management company, it has different departments. It has a fund manager, it has an analyst, it has different departments into IT, technology, customer support, accounting, etc. So we are going to understand this organizational structure and what is the role of these different departments in an AMC, followed by the next topic that describes the role and support functions of the service providers of mutual funds. So, what does a custodian do? What does a banker do? What does an auditor do? What is the role of stock exchanges in mutual funds? What are the roles and responsibilities of AMFI? That is what we are going to cover in the next part of this chapter. Okay, so we'll begin with the first topic, that is the organizational structure of an asset management company. This is just a classification type of diagram where we have shown what is the structure of an asset management company. So, whenever we start with the mutual funds, the first thing or the first person that you require to launch any mutual funds is a sponsor. So, when you talk about a sponsor, we had studied what are the eligibility criteria for any company to play the role of a sponsor. The sponsor forms a trust. So, mutual fund is formed in the form of a trust, correct? So, the sponsors, they form a trust, appoint trustees, and they collect pool of money from different investors, also known as beneficiaries. After collecting this money, the entire pool of money is handed over to an AMC whose most important role is to invest this money into different financial assets or securities so that the financial goal of the investors can be fulfilled. So, first we have a sponsor who forms a trust and appoints the trustees. These trustees hand over the pool of money to an asset management company, also known as an AMC. So, now when we talk about the organizational structure of an asset management company, first, they have different compliance officers. Okay. Then they have a fund manager who plays a very important role here, where they have different analysts, fund managers, and dealers. Okay. Then they have a department of operations and customer service, where they have people like RTA, registrar and transfer agency, custodian, fund accounting and cash management, and risk management. The next department is for the sales and marketing of the different schemes, where they have distributors and other functions that they have, or other departments that act as a supporting service includes finance and administration, human resource development, and IT and technology. We are going to study all these in detail further. Okay, let's start with the first, and that is the compliance function. Now, when you talk about compliance function, the word compliance itself means that you need to follow all the rules, regulation, laws that are laid down by SEBI or any competent authority on mutual funds. So if I am an asset management company, I play the role of investing the money of different investors or beneficiaries into different mutual fund schemes. So while doing this process, there are certain rules and processes that are laid down by SEBI. I need to ensure that everything is done as per legal compliances and within the legal purview of the SEBI. So the compliance functions ensure that everything is done as per SEBI regulations and the laws that are applicable in all the processes. Correct? Then if we talk about the role of a compliance officer who is responsible to ensure the complete compliance during the mutual fund process, first thing, he has to ensure that all the processes are legally correct. So all the laws are followed, all the rules and regulations that are laid down by SEBI are followed. Okay. he has to sign due diligence certificate documents of new issues confirming two things: that we have complied with all the SEBI regulations, and all the intermediaries that were involved in the process, they have the requirement document licenses and approvals as required by SEBI from time to time. So if I'm a compliance officer, it is my duty to ensure that everything is done as per rules, regulations, laws of the SEBI. And that is why during new issue, I have to sign the document stating that I have clearly verified that all the processes are done as per the legal compliance. And anyone who was a part of this process, any intermediary, any employee, any person has the legal requirements or licenses or documentations and certifications that are required by SEBI from time to time. Okay, important thing: how and where do they report? So, for example, if I'm a compliance officer, to whom do I report? The compliance officer directly reports to the head of the AMC. So basically, there are no middlemen or intermediaries involved here, so that there is smooth communication and quick communication between the AMC and the compliance officer, and hence the compliance officer directly reports to the head of the AMC. They also work very close with the trustees because it is a duty of the trustee to ensure the safety of the investors, right? So they also ensure that they work very closely with the trustees. And if there are any questions regarding the compliance or legal documentation that are raised by trustees, it is a duty of the compliance officer to solve their queries or answer their questions. Non-compliance, if they find any kind of statutory lapses or legal lapses in the process where there is non-compliance of any of the legal laws or acts or rules laid down by the SEBI, it is a duty of the compliance officer to report it immediately to the trustees as well as the head of the AMC, right? So in short, if we talk about a compliance officer, the compliance officer is responsible to ensure that all the mutual fund activities and processes are done within the legal purview. Okay. The fund management function. Now, when you talk about fund management, you have analyst, you have fund manager, you also have risk management. Okay. What is the role of an analyst? What does a fund manager do? That is what we are going to understand in detail. Now, when you talk about fund management, it is the most important and critical function of an AMC. Fund management is basically you have to manage the pool of money that you have received from the trust. Okay. So it is duty of the fund management to ensure the money is invested into different financial securities based on the scheme for which the money was given by the investor, and to ensure that they meet their financial goals as well. Okay. So it is a very important function of the AMC, and it forms the value proposition of the company, where first thing you need to invest the investors money according to the objective of the scheme. Like we had studied in the previous chapter, there are different types of mutual fund schemes that people invest into. Some might be equity focused, some might be debt focused, some might be hybrid schemes, some might be open ended, some might be closed ended. So depending on the type of scheme for which you have received the amount of money, you need to align with the objective of the scheme and accordingly invest the money. Second, to manage investments efficiently and generate optimal returns within the risk framework. So we all know that mutual funds are subject to market risk, but depending on the type of scheme, the amount of risk will vary, right? So you need to understand the scheme, what are the risk factors that are associated with the scheme, and accordingly make decisions regarding where the money will be invested. Now, in fund management, there are various sub teams that are formed, right? For example, the first sub team is of an analyst. Now, who is an analyst? The role of analyst is to study the different markets that we can invest our money into. For example, we have equity market, we have debt market, we have commodity market. So it is the role of the analyst to study these markets, their trends, their ups and downs, and identify different investment opportunities which will help the investors generate returns. Now, they may specialize into equity or debt or commodity, any of different financial assets. Okay. So their role is to generate research-based investment ideas for the fund management team. They cannot directly take decisions onto where the money will be invested. It is just the role to study or research about the market, its conditions, ups and downs, and accordingly suggest the fund management team that where the money can be invested to generate higher returns. Okay. Next, the team is of fund managers. These are people who actually decide where the money will be invested. Okay, so they have the power to make the decision. Now, when you talk about fund managers, they evaluate the different investment opportunities that are proposed by the analyst. So, after the analyst does the market research, finds out different investment opportunities, they pass it on to the fund managers who then analyze these opportunities and accordingly identify the areas where the money can be invested. They might take these data from risk managers, they might take these opportunities from independent analysts, they might do their own research to find out investment opportunities as well. But the final investment decision made by these fund managers. And that is why they are responsible for the overall performance of any mutual fund scheme, because it is their final decision to decide where the money will be invested, into which securities or which companies' securities, etc. Then you have a third sub team of different dealers. These dealers are responsible to execute the order. Okay, so they do buying and selling of different securities as per the instructions of the fund manager. Again, they cannot act on their own. They cannot decide where do they want to invest their money, which securities do they want to buy or sell. They act on the instructions of the fund manager. So they place orders with different brokers and ensure that timely buying and selling of these securities take place. So analysts, they will do market research, pass on different research analysis to the fund manager. They will analyze all the different investment opportunities and then make the final decision where the money will be invested. And this decision will be communicated to the dealer, who will then accordingly act as per the instructions given by the fund manager. This is how it actually functions, and this is how the AMC will invest the money of its different investors or beneficiaries. Correct? Now, you will see the second department, that is the AMC teams and their functions. Okay, so the first team was fund management. The second team is the operations and customer service team. The operations and customer service team, they have front offices also, they have back offices also. Now, what is front office and what is back office? It is not like you have an office directly in the front or directly at the back. No, front office is where you directly first hand deal with the customers. Back office is where you directly do not deal with the customers, but you support with data or information or research which helps the front office in dealing with the customers. Correct? So they have front offices as well as back offices for investors where we address their queries. If they have any service related issue, it is a duty of this department to solve their issue. They have different call centers, chatbots, digital solutions also available to solve the issues of the investors quickly. Okay. They also have different sub teams. The first sub team is of RTS, Registrar and Transfer Agent. Now, who is a registrar or transfer agent and what are their roles? First, it is their duty to maintain the record of all the investors of a particular scheme. They allot and redeem the units based on buying and selling that is done by the investor. Processing transactions whenever there is sale, purchase, or switch of units done by the investor. Generate different account statement that helps the investor understand they have how many units of which scheme available. Okay, so basically maintaining the data of the investors is the responsibilities of RTA, as well as whenever any purchase, sale, or exchange transactions are made by the investors, it is a duty of the RTS to execute these transactions and accordingly make changes in their statements. Correct? you have the custody team, also known as the team of custodians. Interact with custodian for settlement of transactions initiated by the fund management team. So you have the fund management team who decides on where the money and in which scheme the money will be invested. Once the money is invested and different units are bought, accordingly, the settlements are done by this team in coordination with the custodian. Why with the custodian? Because if you remember in the last lecture, I had clearly explained custodian is a person who holds the financial assets on behalf of the investors of the mutual fund scheme. So, whatever assets are bought with the money is held by the custodian, correct? So, they coordinate with the custodian and accordingly, all the transactions are settled. The fund accounting team. Okay, there are two different accounting teams. One accounting team does accounting work of the asset management company. The second accounting team is only responsible to do the accounting work of the mutual fund schemes itself, not for the company. They do not manage or maintain the accounts of the company. They only maintain the accounts of the different mutual fund schemes. So they have books of accounts of each scheme and they're responsible to calculate the NAV on daily basis. So whatever NAV is calculated, a very important part, it is calculated by the fund accounting team. Okay. Then you have the RMF, risk management function. Now, we all know that mutual funds are subject to market risk, but it cannot be any amount of risk. The risk should be managed based on the scheme that you're investing into. So, these specialized function as per SEBI RMF dedicated risk officers for investment risk, compliance risk, operational risk, and cybersecurity risk should be appointed. There are investment risks that is based on the market conditions. There are cyber security risks that is based on different hacking or fraudsters. There are risk of operations as well. There are risk of compliance as well. For example, if there are compliance issues, if there are some laws that were not followed, these officers are appointed to analyze all these risks and accordingly calculate the amount of risk into every scheme. Okay. The next is sales and marketing team. Now, sales and marketing team is very important if you see from the AMC point of view, from the asset management company point of view, because it is this team that is responsible to ensure that they receive good amount or good pool of money into different schemes, will be able to invest this money. Higher the distribution, higher the amount they can pool from different investors, higher will be the benefit for the AMC. So now when you talk about sales and marketing team, they reach different investors through different marketing options. They do callings, they do different marketing campaigns, etc. Managing the branding, advertising, conducting different events, product promotion, work with the distributors of the scheme for relationship management and engagement. Remember, the distributors are different, the marketing and sales team is different. Expand the distribution network through training and development programs. So basically, they focus on sales. Okay. There are other support functions as well that helps in the functioning of the AMC. For example, you have a finance and account team. Remember, this accounting team is only for the fund, only for the mutual funds. Okay. This accounting team does the accounting work for the asset management company, not for mutual fund schemes. Then you have administration team that focuses on the management of the infrastructure, different offices that are held by the AMC. Human resource development team that ensures they have competent workforce and ensures their retention, training, promotions, etc. IT team, information technology team, if the AMC has any softwares or any digital solutions, it is duty of this team to ensure smooth functioning of such IT solutions or softwares or websites that are owned by this particular asset management company. Okay. Now, here you have these things again given in detail. So when you talk about the fund accountant, remember the fund accountant is only responsible to manage the accounting of the mutual fund schemes and not the AMC. Okay. They calculate the NAV on daily basis, a very important part. They may be handled in-house or through a service provider. Now the AMC can have their own fund accountant, or they can hire the service from any third party company or service provider who gives such services. No registration with SEBI is required for any fund accountant. So fund accountant does not have a compulsion to have a registration with SEBI. Okay. When you talk about RTAs, registrars and transfer agents, they maintain the record of the investors and all the transactions that are conducted by the investors, update the portfolios, unit capital, etc. based on the transactions, and then appointments made by the AMC as the registration with the SEBI is mandatory. A very important point. Okay. AMC may also handle this in-house. It is not necessary for them to appoint RTS. They can choose to do this themselves as well, depending on whatever they choose. But if you appoint RTS from outside, their registration with SEBI is mandatory. Any person who does not have the registration with SEBI cannot be appointed as an RTA. Okay. Next, these are auditors. Now you have two category of auditors. One category of auditors are appointed by the trustees who does the audit of the mutual fund schemes and their accounts. The second category of auditors, as appointed by the AMC, is responsible to do the audit of the accounts of the AMC, not the mutual fund schemes. So these both have a separation. Remember that. So when we talk about auditors, they're responsible for audit of accounts of mutual fund schemes, and schemes account are maintained separately from AMC accounts as highlighted earlier. These auditors are appointed by the trustees and both auditors must be different. Remember that. The auditor who is doing the audit of the AMC cannot be the same who will do the audit of the mutual fund schemes as well. They have to be different. Okay. Then you talk about distributors. Again, to become a distributor, you need to complete this complete module, that is the mutual funds distribution module of NISM. Okay, it is compulsory for them to complete it. Key role is selling suitable mutual fund schemes to the investors based on their financial goals. They can be any individuals or institutions. Must pass NISM 5A module like already highlighted. SEBI also allows a new cadre NISM Series 5B foundation for limited set of schemes only. So if you do the 5B module, there is again a separate section where and some schemes are available where you can deal with these schemes only. Okay. Now, when you talk about the next, that is collecting bankers or payment aggregators. Now, obviously, when you talk about mutual funds, there are a lot of monetary transactions involved. There might be one scheme where you might be pooling crores of rupees of money for that particular scheme. But for every scheme, there is a different bank account that is maintained. So you have scheme 1, scheme 2, scheme 3, scheme 4. There will be 4 different bank accounts for these schemes. So if I invest in scheme 1, my money will go into account 1. You invest in scheme 3, your money will go into account 3. Okay. Bankers maintain scheme bank accounts and facilitate collection and payment of the funds. They accept the application and instrument at branches for investors' convenience as well. Payment aggregators, gateways, digital wallets, and payment banks are also available if people want to invest via online mediums. Now you have different applications, different websites via which you can invest. So they have digital payment modes also through which you can make the payments. But the basic role of these collection bankers is to collect money received for different mutual fund schemes and maintain separate accounts for these schemes. Okay, so all the transactions that are made for different mutual fund schemes are done via them. KYC registration agencies known as KRAs. Now, KYC registration is mandatory for any investor so that we can avoid money laundering. Correct? But when we talk about this KYC registration, it is not that you have to do different registration or multiple times of registration for every scheme that you invest into. No, only one time KYC registration of the investor is done, and these data are maintained by the KRAs. Whenever you invest into mutual fund schemes of different companies or different agencies, the same data is passed on to different agencies or different AMCs. So they ensure KYC, know your customer compliance, is completed. Quite common KYC for the investors across all securities market. You do not have to do KYC for different securities market and different mutual fund schemes. They have to be registered with the SEBI and issue a unique KYC identification number to every investor. Okay. So once I complete my KYC, I will get an individual identification number via KYC. The same number can be used for any security market transaction or investment into different mutual fund scheme. They have to ensure that they maintain the confidentiality of the data of the investors. Now, obviously, you are getting a lot of personal information of the investors. So you have to ensure that you maintain the data, you maintain the confidentiality of the data, and that is why whenever the data is shared across different agencies or different AMCs or different markets, it is done via computerized connectivity and have to ensure confidentiality of the information. Okay. The next is valuation agencies. Now, these valuation agencies are required especially for the debt markets. Okay. Whenever you're investing into debt instruments, these valuation agencies are required. As per SEBI, there should be minimum 2 valuation agencies that do independent valuation of the debt instruments in the market in which the mutual fund have invested. So SEBI guidelines require at least 2 valuation agencies for non-traded or thinly traded debt securities. The valuation matrix that is used by AMCs to arrive at a fair valuation. Valuation matrix is basically how you can value different debt instruments because accordingly it is calculated. Logic says for any debt instrument, when credit rating is high, that means that particular instrument becomes safe. For any debt instrument, if the credit rating is low, that becomes a risky kind of debt instrument. So whenever you have schemes that are investing into different debt instruments, it is important to give that risk calculator to the investor so that accordingly they can take decision whether they really want to take that much amount of risk or not. But to calculate this risk, AMFI, that is Association of Mutual Funds of India, they have appointed 2 credit rating agencies, CRISIL and ICRA. They are credit rating agencies. Okay, and the role is to give credit ratings to different debt instruments so that accordingly the risk can be calculated. Correct? The next is credit rating agencies like CRISIL and ICRA. They rate the debt securities, like I've already mentioned, issued by various issuers, provide initial input for investment decisions. Based on the credit rating and the risk calculation, they actually suggest whether these securities are safe to invest or highly risky. Important for certain debt fund categories like corporate bond, credit risk funds for determining portfolio risk. Portfolio risk is the amount of risk that you take while investing into certain securities. There are people who are ready to take higher risk for higher returns. But again, mentioning the risk, giving that riskometer is important so that accordingly the investor can take correct decisions based on their requirements or financial goals. Okay. The next is the depository and the depository participant. Okay. Depository is someone who holds your securities in digital or dematerialized form. So whenever you invest into any securities, all these securities are held by the depository in a dematerialized form. Correct? But as an investor, do not directly connect with the depository. You have an intermediary known as the depository participant. So as an investor, we connect to the depository participant, and it is the depository participant that connects with the depository directly. We cannot directly connect with the depository. Okay? In two depositories, NSDL and CDSL. Okay? So when you talk about depositories and depository participant, depository holds your securities in a dematerialized form, that is in an electronic form. Okay. Mutual fund units can also be held in demat form through a depository participant who acts as an intermediary between the investor and the depository. Now you have two options: either to put your securities, mutual fund units, into a demat account which will be held by the depository, or you can hold your mutual fund units by an account statement that is issued by the fund accountant or by the RTFs. Okay. ETFs compulsorily held in demat form because they are traded in stock exchanges. So if you invest into ETFs, it will be held into demat account only. Then you do not have the option to hold it with RTAs where they will issue account statements. Depository participant, they act as an intermediary, like I've already mentioned, between the investors and the depositories. In India, you have only two depositories: NSDL, National Securities Depository Limited, and CDSL, Central Depository Services Limited. Okay, let's move forward. The next is the stock exchanges and transaction platforms. Now, a lot of students ask me, what is the role of stock exchanges in mutual funds? Now, if you're dealing in ETFs and close-ended mutual funds, I had taught this in chapter number 2 and chapter number 1 as well. Okay. So, if you're dealing in closed-ended mutual funds, or if you're dealing in ETFs, where these mutual fund units are directly traded into stock exchanges for the liquidity, obviously, then you require a stock exchange, or the stock exchange has a role in the mutual funds. The investors can transact in mutual fund units through the stock exchanges, especially when you talk about close-ended funds or ETFs. Open-ended funds are also available on special programs, where if you talk about BSE, this special program is known as BSE Star Mutual Funds. If you talk about NSE, it is known as NMF2 platform. Okay. When you talk about mutual fund utilities India, again a platform where mutual funds are traded. This platform is managed and issued by AMFI, Association of Mutual Funds of India, where they allow aggregation of transactions where you can do purchase, sale, switch of different mutual fund units, single platform for transaction across multiple mutual funds. This is a platform that is ideally used for mutual fund units transaction. Okay. Internet and mobile-based applications have increased reach, reduced paperwork and errors, and improved investor convenience. So obviously, when you talk about these applications that are available on your mobile, they have different websites as well. Even if you go to the AMFI website, you can see the listed AMCs also there. Okay. So these websites are also available. All these internet transactions that are convenient for the investors makes it easy, convenient, quick, etc. Okay. The next is EOPs, execution only platforms. When execution only platforms, these are online applications or platforms that help in the transaction, subscription, redemption, and switch of different mutual fund schemes. However, these platforms have to be either registered with SEBI or have to be registered with the AMFI. Okay. So there are two categories of execution only platforms. Category 1, which is registered with AMFI, and category 2, which is registered with stock exchange. So with category 1, these entities shall be a body corporate and act as an agent of the AMC. Okay. They integrate systems with the AMC's RTAs to facilitate transaction. So these are basically platforms that are the agent of the AMC, where the AMC uses these platforms to help their investor transact their money. So it is the agent of the AMC and aggregator and provide services to the investors or the intermediaries, right? When we talk about category 2 EOP that has to be registered with the stock exchange, it is a body corporate, acts as an agent but of the investor. Okay, so they only operate via stock exchange and has to be registered by SEBI. Has to be registered under the stock exchange as per the SEBI's Regulation Act of 1992. So these are the agents of the AMCs. However, these are the agents of the investors themselves. So they act on the behalf of the investor, where investors can choose that which mutual fund units they need to trade on stock exchanges, where they do buying and selling of these units on the stock exchanges. Okay. A very important topic. What are the different objectives of AMFI, Association of Mutual Funds of India? Why do we have Association of Mutual Funds of India, and what is their role and objectives? The first objective is to define and maintain high professional and ethical standards. Basically ensure that in mutual fund industry, when you have a lot of pool of money that is invested, ensure that all the transactions are ethical. There are no fraudulent practices, there are no unethical practices here. Promote best business practices and code of conduct that is to be followed by all the members that are involved in this industry, whether it be AMC, sponsors, trustees, etc. They also directly interact with SEBI, that is Securities and Exchange Board of India, and also represent them into all matters and different matters concerning the mutual fund industry. They also represent the government, our central bank, RBI, and other bodies on all matters again that are related to mutual fund industry. So anything that is related to mutual fund industry, it is the role of the AMFI to represent it. And this nationwide investor awareness program, like they also undertake a lot of awareness programs about mutual funds, SIPs, etc. Okay, to create awareness about mutual funds, to make people aware and to encourage people to invest into mutual funds as well. Disseminate, to give information on the mutual fund industry and to undertake studies and researches. Regulate distributors, including disciplinary actions. So there are distributors who violate the code of conduct or the rules laid down by SEBI. AMFI literally cancels the license and they cannot work as a mutual fund distributor anymore. Remember, to work as a mutual fund distributor, you need an license or ARN number from the AMFI. But if you violate their code, your license or the ARN number can be cancelled as well. Obviously, all of this is done to protect the interest of the investors who invest into different mutual fund schemes. Okay. So if we talk about the key role, it registers mutual fund distributors by allotting AMFI registration number, that is ARN, right? Now, AMFI also issues various circulars recommending best practices for AMCs and distributors. If you violate them, it is the right of the AMFI to even cancel your licenses, whether it be of the distributor or the asset management company. AMFI is neither a regulatory body nor a self-regulatory organization. That is what you need to remember. Okay. So if we talk about AMFI, it promotes high standards, best practices, and investor protection and awareness. They ensure that this industry is free of fraudulent and unethical practices so that more people can trust and invest into different mutual fund schemes as well. Okay. Thank you for today. I guess we completed unit number 3 here. Unit number 3 is more on the technical end. So the questions will also be technical. They're very standard and direct questions that come from unit number 3. After we finish with the syllabus of module, we will also do a lot of questions as practice so that you can understand whether you'll be able to answer these questions in the exam or not. Okay, we'll start with unit number 4 in the next lecture. But for today, bye bye, see you, take care. Have a great day ahead.